So without further ado, here it is.
All right. Good. Thank you. I was not expecting that. So, good morning, everybody. As Nick already said, my name's Lewis. Thank you for coming to this year's first NEMMEC and to the seminar. Today, we're going to do some scribing and scratch build basics on our HG powered gym here. So far, it's a pretty good kit. And then before we do that, let's go over the tools that we have outlined to you. So pretty much these are the tools you'll need for scribing and for building the kit. Of course, we have our nippers to cut out the parts. Nick's cutting out the tape right now because I forgot ahead of time. The Display 2mm and 3mm tape. There are different tapes like 3s, 4s, 5s, 6s, 1s, but today we're just going to be doing the 2 and the 3. We have the scissors to cut out of course, the wrapping on the box and any tape. We need to make adjustments to the size. Tweezers for handling the tape. These are important because you don't want to hold the tape with your hands because any oils will take off the adhesiveness and then it won't stick as right. So we always use tweezers when handling the display tape. We have the mechanical pencil to give out our outline and our idea of how we're going to do the line work. And you can use this for scribing needs too. We have the X-Acto knife to cut out the styrene that are laid out in bags for each of you guys. That was pre-made ahead of time. We have 400 grit sandpaper. Mine's just a strip. You guys have a pad, but it doesn't matter which way it is. It works the same. That's so when we do the sand, that's to cut out the parts and any nubs, so we need to sand those off. And that's when we do the scribing to get off any of the debris. And then to get the debris, we also have this gun primer brush. And of course, scribing tool we have is the gun primer gritta that's next to you. If you want to open that up now to put in the needle, because that is a delicate part, be careful when you put that in not to hurt yourself. And then we have the Tamiya cement, that's to glue your styrene together, and of course your friendly ruler. So if you want to open that up and then to open up the box once you're done with that, so that makes it easier when we cut out the parts. So once that's set, we can cut out the torso elements, because that's what the part we're going to focus on today. So I omitted the yellow section to make this easier when you take it apart. If you put it in, it's fine. If you put in the poly caps, that's fine too. But essentially all we really need for today is these 4 parts. The red part that goes in the chest cavity, the orange chest, and the white section. That's essentially all we're going to need for today's seminar.
So 4 parts?
Yeah. And it doesn't need to be perfect. Like you can see mine still has nubs. That we're going to ignore. And the nubs on the side will be removed later. But all that really matters is just these 4 parts. The only part that try to get the nubs off the most is the red one here, because that fits in the chest. But that doesn't have to be perfect either. Pretty much, you've assembled it. This is how it looks straight out the box. We're going to focus on the scribing elements first, and then from there, we're going to do the scratch building. We're going to scribe the upper sections of the chest, the left and the right, the lower sections, left and right, the sides of the chest here, and this inner orange cavity here. And we're going to go from easiest to more complex. Now, since we're beginning, we're going to do one line at a time so you guys get a feel of everything and see how it works, because holding the pen is also an experience as well. So what we can do, this is your before. We're not going to get to all of it today, but this is the after with some scribing and plot plate scratch building. So we're going to do hopefully a good amount of this guy. I'm going to try to hold it still so it could kind of buffer through. So just give me a moment. So we're going to focus on these sections for scribing. We're going to focus on this minute section. We're going to do the whole thing so you can feel it. And then we're going to scribe, we're going to plot plate over it so you can see how different layers give contrast. And if you give a slight mistake, this covers it too. The sides we're going to do are going to look like here. This section here. I left it blank, so if you want to add anything after the fact, you can too. Because you can always add more and more on top. And then we're going to do this little rectangle section as well. And once we're done with the scribing, we can then decide from there what scratch building you want to do, because we have 3 bags on your sides. There's the chest, there's the upper waist, and there's a lower waist. The lower waist is going to be this section that I've actually heightened. We could do that today if you guys want to do that. The upper section's bagged. This counts as it. And then the chest is going to be this section here in the middle, these sides, these sides. So after we do the scribing, we could see which section you guys want to do the most, and then we can go from there. How's that sound? That sound good? Okay. So we're going to do the easiest scribing section first, which is I call it the uppermost part of the chest. So what you're going to do is you're going to get your mechanical pencil, and we're just going to draw. The lines don't have to be perfect. This is just to give an idea of how the outline's going to look, because first we're going to do these edges here, and we're going to do like a line going straight down. It doesn't need to be perfect because this line's just a guide. Essentially what we're going to do is we're going to take our 2mm tape afterwards and put it on this edge, and we're going to get that line here. This is just so we get an idea of what we're conceptualizing. And the other line's going to be, I want it to load a little bit. It's going to be from this little indicator here, this little corner. We're going to go to here. So we're going to do this out. It doesn't have to be perfect. It'll probably come off when we do the scribing itself. But this is just an idea of how we want the concept to look. And always use indicators. It's probably easier when you see at the part in front of you. There's like a little corner where it bends at the corner. We're going from that corner straight down. And then when we go to symmetry later, that's when we're going to use our ruler. So for now, just draw this straight line. And then you could do this line in this diagonal however you like it. Doesn't matter. Scribing, you're free to do whatever you like. Once you're done with that, you're going to grab your 2mm display guiding tape. Grab a little bit of it. You don't need that much. And then you're going to use your scissors to cut out a section, which I'm going to do. Try to follow now nicely with the display. They have the little lines. Try to cut straight underneath one of the black lines, or the dotted one's fine. And then after you cut it, you're going to use your tweezer because you don't want to use your hands to get any oils on it because that could ruin the adhesiveness. And then you're going to gently put it against the edge. Now don't rush. This is a critical part. And if it comes off slightly off, you don't want that to happen. So just put it down until you're comfortable with it. And then once you're comfortable with it, use the same tweezer and apply a little bit of pressure on top of the tape. You can see the adhesive begins to stick on. And I'd like to do a little flick test with the tweezer on the excess too to see if it's going to come off. Because if it's applied too loosely, when you do your scribing, it can be uneven, it could be inconsistent, so just be careful with that. And then once you're satisfied, let me know and we can proceed with the scribing element. But don't rush this part, as it is important. Pretty much the number one rule when you're doing with anything with Gunpla, of course, is never rush. I'd rather you take 10 minutes to do one line than to rush it and do like the entire kit at once, because you don't want to look at it like a month from now or years from now regretting that you rushed it. Take your time. There's no race in anything. I'm very slow at this because I don't want it to look bad at the end. So just take your time. What we're going to do is we're going to use our Grita. And before we begin, I'm just going to explain how we're going to do the basics of scribing. You're going to do 4 light passes without any pressure against the tape. I'll show you, but I want to say it first to reiterate it. We're going to do 4 light passes against the tape to create like a groove or a notch. That's pretty much to give us a guide. When we put more pressure afterwards, we can cast a line better. So we're going to do 4 light, and then after that we're going to do 5 with pressure, and then we're going to go backwards. Because even though you cast a line going down, if you want the depth to be the same, you go in reverse. Never hold it 90 degrees. Hold it 60 or 45. Treat it like a pencil. It's kind of built like one, so treat it the same way. And it's more comfortable that way too. So what I'm going to do is because essentially you're going to put your Grita against the tape. And we're going to go down, and we're going to do light passes. So 1, 2, 3, 4. And then we're going to do the same thing 5 times with more pressure applied. Is that visible? Okay. So now I'm going to put slightly more pressure. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And I'm going to rotate the part, and then I'm going to go in reverse. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And then once you're done with that, we're going to remove it with the tweezers. Now take your time, don't rush it. We're going to take it off with the tweezers. Get the sandpaper. sand it down because you're pretty much scraping the plastic off. And then we're going to use the brush that we have. We're going to brush off any residual. And there we've made our first. Anyhow, we're going to do the other line going from this corner here. If it came off, that's okay. We can redraw it. So I'm going to go from this corner, this indicator, and I'm going to go to whatever depth you feel like. I'm probably doing like 2 millimeters out. That's fine. And we're going to do the same process. You're going to cut out your dissipate tape. We're going to use our friendly. Never reuse the same tape. Like this one, I still have it on my tweezers. Never reuse it because you can still have dust and debris on it. Always use a fresh one. If you use the old one, the adhesive's not as strong and it can move during the process. So I'm going to apply the tape behind my guideline. Now the tape doesn't fit perfect because the way the shape, you can also trim like an edge or corner off it till it fits the way you like it to be. And apply a little pressure with the tweezers again because you don't want the tape to come off. And I like to do a little flip test. Looks like it's good so far. And then essentially we're going to repeat the process with the Grita. So we're going to go from that top corner, we're going to go down. We're going to do 4 light passes. As you do the light passes, you should feel the groove coming in. And then afterwards, we're going to do 5 light passes with pressure. Oh, sorry, 5 passes after with pressure, after the 4 light ones. So 1, 2. Don't apply too much pressure. You don't want to make it too deep or inconsistent. 3, 4, 5. And then we're going to do the same thing in reverse as prior. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. We can take it off. And then we're going to sand it down like prior, and same concept. Remember not to rush. Go at your own pace. Apply what pressure you feel comfortable with. And if it's not perfect, it's okay. Scribing, if it's a light scribe, you can always sand it out. If it's too deep, you could fix it with putty. If you don't have putty, I've learned if you take some of the runner plastic and you melt that down with like cement and you putty it over it, it does soothe over. So if you want, we can do the opposite side, or we can move to a different section. What do you guys want to do next? Opposite side or a different section?
I think different section.
Okay. So we can then move to a lower section. This one I find not as bad actually. So it's same concept. I'm gonna remove the white. Oh, bro. Anyhow, I'm gonna remove that section off. I'm gonna draw a rough outline how I want it to look. So we're gonna go for something like this. Pretty much coming from these sections going down. Now this one, like the first scribe we did, we're gonna utilize the Grita for our template. This is just an outline how it's gonna look. So there we go. So we're gonna use 3mm display tape for the top and bottom section, and then we're gonna use the 2mm for the side. So I'm gonna lay down the 3mm first. So same concept, you're gonna cut out a section, use your tweezers to grab it off. Now for the bottom section, you're gonna kind of have it along the edge of the bottom of the part. And we're gonna utilize the top part as where the line's gonna be. The mechanical pencil for this section was just used for an outline as prior. So we're gonna do something like that. So something like that's what we're going for. So it's going to be against this edge of the lower section, and the top of this part's going to be where we're going to scribe. Then we're going to put another 3mm at the top here, and then a 2mm going down that edge.
So lay it all out first.
What?
Lay them all out at once?
Yep. If you don't feel comfortable doing them all at once, at first, that's fine. We could do one at a time. I'm just going to do them all out at once so you could see how the tapes can overlay on top of each other and to see how the design's going to work out. And then laying it out on all at once does help with corners, so that's beneficial too. But in the beginning, you don't have to do it all at once. You could do one at a time. And then rub down each time you put the tape, so make sure the adhesive applies. So now we got the top part. And then we're going to do the side. So when we do against the side, we're doing 2 millimeter for that one. 3 for the top and the bottom, 2 for the edge. So we'll cut out a section there. And sorry for the camera difficulties, everyone. And then that one, like the ones for the top and bottom, we're going to apply it against the edge. And rub that down so that can apply. So you want that to be applied pretty good because it is overlaid on top if you're doing the overlay method. If not, we could do one at a time, it doesn't matter. So it should look something like that. Okay. Any questions so far? No? Okay.
If you're in a tough spot, and you know how you start going down first, you go backwards after. If you're in a tough spot, you start backwards and then go back the other way.
You go, do whatever method is comfortable at first.
Spot or something.
Yeah, so like for this one, since this is kind of like an awkward angle here at the top, you're not going to go all the way in because that part's not even visible. You're going to go to the part where the pen can actually fit, and then you're going to go down. For the tight spots, go for the spot that's easiest for you to cast the line at first, because when you're going backwards, you're already going to have that groove in there. The back spots just to make when you're going backwards, this is to make the depth even.
Right.
So, and if that helps.
Yeah.
And then we're using the tape because freehand scribing is not really good at the beginning because pressures are inconsistent. Freehand scribing is pretty good if you're already, for practicing, if you already have pre-lines that Bandai already applies, like on the kits, you can always do that for practice so you can gauge the depth and everything. Yeah. But in the beginning, don't really freehand scribe. That takes many years to get good at. So it doesn't matter if you start at the bottom here, the side, or at the top. I'm just going to start at the top, and we're going to do each line first, and at the end, we're going to connect them all to make the corners crisp. So we're going to focus on the top line. That likes to focus. So we're going to I'm just trying to get the camera right. Okay. So we're going to do the top four light passes. 1, 2, 3, 4. Now, if you go off the tape by accident and you kind of have a line going down, that's fine. Just don't touch that line. Try to go back against the tape. That light line, if you did mess up in the beginning, we can sand that out after. So after you've done your 4 light passes, we're going to do 5 pressure. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. and then 5 backwards. Now, if you can't go back all the way, that's okay, because the part's kind of recessed in there. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And then I'm going to do the bottom, same concept. Light pass. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And then we're going to do some pressure. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And then reverse. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And then we're going to do the line going, the vertical line. So we're going to do 1, 2, 3, 4, and then with pressure. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and then the backwards. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. The reason why we did the lines individually so they can all have the same depth and they're all uniform. And then from there, what you can do is you can connect the corners. I like to do it from the vertical line because that's the easiest. So we're going to go all the way straight down to connect that corner, and we're going to go backwards and connect that corner opposite. If you want to try it out, you can connect all the lines by doing the whole scribe pattern. You don't have to. And then we're going to remove the tape. And then we're going to scribe that down. Sorry, sand that down. Just to get the outline. And take the brush. And you brush out any dust in there. Why you don't like me, Cameron? So the line should look something like that. There's some dust in between, so let me try to. So it should look something like that. Now, if it's not perfect, that's fine. The guard kind of covers the section. So we put the guard on, it will cover up any imperfections you have, but that's the template we're going for. Any questions so far? I'll walk on by just so you guys can see how it can look for easier access. For the symmetry, for the opposite side of this, the reason why I had you guys do the 3mm top at the bottom and the 2 at the edge is because if you lay it out the same way you did on the other side, it should be symmetrical. Because that's pretty much your template. Where the symmetry comes in for that, it's going to be like where we did this diagonal one. That's why I had to do an indicator at the top so you know where you're going from. And then from your distance from the first line we did, you will use your ruler to gauge how far that is. Like mine's exactly at 2. So when I do the opposite side, I'll use the ruler again, and I'll know it's 2. For symmetry, you can use like a caliper. Sometimes those are too finicky. There's compasses too, but I've learned they don't really lock in place. They're pretty loose. So I just like to use a ruler, like a regular metal 6-inch ruler. And sometimes if I forget what lines I'm doing, I actually just add little ticks to the lines, so I know exactly where I'm supposed to be. And then I go from there. But just to get an idea, we're going to do the upper section. If you want to follow me, you can. If you want to do the opposite side, you're free to. So the upper section is a little more complex because we're going for something like this. But this is a combination of plot plate and scribing. But we're going to do the scribing first so you can get an outline where the plot plate's going to go. If it's not perfect, that's okay. The plot plate's going to cover that part. And if the lines are, if you're ever unhappy with lines, you can always putty them, scribe over it. If not, what I've learned using different size chisels works. Because the scribing pencil is pretty much like a 1mm. You have chisels that range from like 0.1, 0.2, 0.3, and they go on forward. Sorry, that's a 0.1. But they go forward from that. 1mm is too thick, that's fine. If you mess up with the 0.1, which you guys are holding, you can redo it with a 0.2, which actually I did here, which is why you can see it slightly wider, and it gives a different look to it. So even everybody makes mistakes. I make mistakes all the time. Don't let that hinder you. Don't let that deter you. Just keep moving forward. And the only way you can learn pretty much is through making mistakes and a lot of practice. Today we're practicing, so if it happens, it's okay. So like earlier, we're going to use indicators. So I'm going to move from this corner edge here, and I'm actually going to connect it here. So we're going to go for a line like this. And then what we're going to do, we're going to use a tape later to make it actually symmetrical. But we're going to have a line going this way. Another line going this way. I'm just going to draw it out roughly. It doesn't have to be perfect, it's okay. So we're going to do, I like to focus. Something like that. Now I changed it slightly from the version I did prior. I got rid of 2 lines to make it actually easier because we are practicing in the beginning. So this lower tape, this lower section we're gonna do with the 2 mil tape. We're gonna do that by itself. And then this section we're also gonna use the 3 mil, we're gonna do by itself. And then we're gonna do these by themselves too, because if we lay it out, it could be too complex. And I feel like if we do one at a time, that gives more practice for you actually holding the tape. So to make it easier, we're going to do this section first. Now it's not too big. We're going to measure that when we put the tape on. So we're going to put the 2 mil, and the tape, you're going to have one edge against this little part here, right where it connects to this ventilation system, right here. And then the other edge of the tape is going to be where we're going to do our line. Does that make sense to everyone? Okay. This one at the top is going to be the same thing as this one. We're just going to use the 3 mil tape. So it's going to be the same concept, just the 3 mil. So we're going to do the 2 first. And then we're going to do 3 mil after. Now try to have fun with this as much as you can. We are making mistakes. We're all practicing. It's okay. Don't let that deter you. Try to have fun. I'm telling that to myself too. So we're going to lay that out on the edge. And like earlier, don't rush, take your time. So we're gonna do essentially that line first. So now that that's applied and I rubbed it down for adhesive, the benefit with the display, you could see they have lines. You have the dotted ones and the black ones that are horizontal to the tape. That we're gonna use for pretty much our symmetry aspect and how wide we're gonna make the line. So I want it to be from, it doesn't matter if you place the dotted one or the other one, it doesn't matter where these lines are, it's the same distance apart. So I want to have it starting from here. I want to do 1, 2, 3. I'm gonna do 3 just to be safe. So we're gonna go from this section. Count that as 0, 1, 2, 3. We're gonna go to that section. If that makes sense. So count your first one as your 0 and then go free from that. Your third one's going to be your last one where you do your cast. Does that make sense to everyone? Okay. Similar as before, we're going to do light passes. Now you can do as many light passes as you need to until you feel the groove. Once you feel the groove, you can then apply pressure and then do like 5 with pressure. But do as many light as you need. There's no rush. So 1, 2, 3, 4. Now I'm going to put pressure. 2, 3, 4, 5. And then I'm going to go in reverse to make the depth the same. 5. And then once you're comfortable with that, we could take the tape off. And I'm going to lightly sand it because I don't want most of the pencil to come off. I'm just going to sand the area that I actually did the scribing. And then once you're happy with that, brush it off because you don't want any dust or sand over there. Because once you put the next tape, if you have any debris left over, it's not going to adhere right and it can move as you're putting it on. From there, I'm going to grab my 3mm because we pretty much want the same. We want the lines to be parallel to each other, which is why we're doing the 2 and the 3. Because if we have it against that line we did earlier and we just do it slightly more depth, they're going to be parallel to each other. Of course, you're free to do whatever design you like. You can change it, you can alter it however you feel. I'm just doing this as an outline. But if you want to change it up, you're free to. Don't be shy. We're going to apply the 3mm tape against the edge like we did with the 2. And once you're happy with that, we're going to apply slight pressure. Now, if you can't see where you drew your outline before, that's okay. And if you have a little bit coming off the corner like I do here, that's fine. We're going to just lay that down. If it doesn't stick on, that's okay. But we're pretty much going to go from this edge corner here. I'm going to go count that as 0, 1, 2. So I'm just going to go 2, not too big. So I'm just going to draw where I'm going to do that part. So I'm going to go from the edge to the tick. Now, if you don't feel comfortable going from the edge, you can go backwards. So actually, I'm going to go from this tick that I counted 2, and I'm going to go this way to the left. And then from there, once I have my groove, I can go back to the right. So rotate the part to make it easier for yourself. Grab your, oh, now the camera likes me. Okay. Grab your gritta. We're going to do 1, 2. And if it goes over and it goes over the side, that's fine. We're going to plot plate over that. 3, 4, 5. So that's my light passes, and I'm going to put pressure. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And I'm going to go in reverse. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Take the tape off. When I take off the tape with my hands because we're not going to reuse it. And that kind of enforces to me that we only use one at a time. Sand that off. And then we're going to brush it. So you should have, in theory, 2 lines that are actually parallel with each other. If that wants to focus. It went from liking me to not liking me.
It's bipolar.
Yeah, it's a love-hate relationship with this camera. There we go. So by doing that from the 0 to 2 and the 0 for free, we have a line coming from the edge to the center, and then we have this line here. Now what we can do, we're going to connect those 2 points. So I'm going to redraw the line. We're going to connect those 2 together to get that notch. And then from there, we're going to go back to our indicator that we have pre-made. And from that other edge, we're going to just go just like that. So we're going to do this guy, then we're going to do this guy, and then we're going to connect it with that. So at this point, if you want to use your 3mm, you can to have more adhesive onto the part. I actually recommend doing the 3 so it's less finicky to move. The 2 is slightly thin. So we're going to do 3mm for the rest of these sections. Because the more surface that's adhered onto, the less likely it is to come off. Okay. Now with this one, you don't have to count the notches because we're actually just connecting the 2 lines we made earlier. What we are going to do is we're just going to line them up and apply, rub it down a little bit so the adhesive applies on. And then like prior, we're going to get our gritta. Now, if you want, you can go from the top down. That's what I feel more comfortable with because it's easier for me to connect up and down. If you want to rotate the part and go the opposite way, you're free to do whatever you would like. I'm just going to go from the top down. We're going to do 4 light passes. And 5 of pressure. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And then 5 in reverse. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Take that guy off. Sand that guy down. And they should connect. Now I didn't brush it off so we can actually see how the line looks. So you can see it faintly. This could be just a lighting, but it is right here. And then we're going to use 3mm again. Don't use the same tape. We're going to do this line up until where your drawing is, and then we're just going to finish it off by doing that connection. So.
Before we wrap up, can we use a good way which ones they keep? I don't need tape. I forgot what else it was. And I believe they keep the kit. Just asking.
Right, they keep the kit.
And then the tape. And
The tape. I'm pretty sure that's it.
Double check.
I'll double check.
Thank you. So we're going to apply that on. And like earlier, I'm going to count our notches. So if I'm counting the one where it's connecting to the line as 0, I want to go 1. So 0, 1, 2. So I'm just going to draw that little tick like earlier. It actually lines up with the line I had earlier for our template. So it lines up just with that. So we're going to go from the line up to that tick. And then once we're done with that, we're going to connect it. Now I'm going to go down this time. I'm going to go from the tick going down. Because if I go the opposite way first, I might make too big of a line. And then when I try to connect it, it might be off. So 1, 2, 3, 4 light passes, and then 5 of pressure. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and then a reverse. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Take that off. Now I purposely went over just so I can show you how a mistake can be sanded off. So it'll become apparent once I sand it. But I kind of went all the way to the connecting part, which is okay. To get rid of that, you can just sand it down. Apply as much pressure as you can to take that off. And once you're happy with it, you can connect the other line. Now, if you put too much pressure and the line can't go away, we just putty it after. So then I'm going to draw back the line I originally had from our indicators here and here. I'm going to take the 3mm and I'm going to do our last line. Take your time applying the tape. You want to make sure that the line you make you're happy with. So apply that. I'm going to go from top down. So 1, 2, 3, 4. Now with pressure. 1, 2, 3, 4. And backwards. 1, 2, 3, 4. Take that guy off. Then we're going to sand it down. I'm going to sand the whole part. And then we're going to brush it. So do you guys want to move along to the other section, which is very similar? Or do you guys want to start with the plot plate?
I like plates. I like plot plates.
Okay. So I asked Ethan, though, to get some panel line thinner just so you guys can see how the lines look after scribing. So I'm just gonna dab that on, and then once that, just so you guys get an idea. If only I had a Q-tip though. Now it's not perfect since we don't have thinner and everything, but that's how the line should look. Now I'm gonna hand around the accent thinner so if you guys wanna see how your lines look as well, because it's easier. And if you don't like the depth, sand it down and continue. So I'm just gonna ask which section of the chest you guys wanna do first. So we have this little scratch built module when it likes to load. So we have this little module, which is a little difficult to do at first. We have these sides that will enhance the sections you guys just made. And then this element here counts as the chest, along with this section here at the side. If we want, we can do the easiest part, which is this. And then we can move to like, so scratch building, there's 3 parts. There's detailing, reshaping, and like actual creating scratch build elements. We can do with the detailing parts first, and then from there we can move to like a scratch build element like this guy. So if you want to open your little baggies that's outlined as chest, and if you want to just array the parts in depth and length and height, because there are various different sizes in there. I've made you guys sizes that I've used, and I also made you guys extra, so you guys are free afterwards to customize it however you want. Because normally they come in a bunch of strips, but I found it easier just to cut them all out the same depth, so it's easier for our little practice run. So take your time organizing them, because I'm going to do the same. So the main ones we're going to use at first are going to look like this. They're the same shape, just different sizes. So try to find 2 of the big ones and 2 of that little one. They should be in each bag. So what we're gonna do is we're gonna glue these guys on. We're gonna start with the bigger shape. So pretty much, I'm not gonna glue it on, I'm just gonna show you how it looks. We're gonna go against the edge. Now it's gonna go slightly over the edge, which is fine. You can just sand away that excess. But essentially it's gonna go next to the line we casted. So it's gonna fit something like that. And it's gonna lay against the vent system, like how we did the 2mm earlier. So we're gonna glue that down. And then once you're happy with that, you're gonna grab the smaller piece that we had earlier. And then you're gonna take very little of the cement, like very, very little. And then you're gonna lay that against the part. A little bit's gonna go over, that's okay. We can cut that and sand it off after. Because you want something like this. So this little excess nub here, I'm just gonna cut that off with my nipper. So if it's not perfect, it's okay. And then you can sand down whatever excess you have. Kind of have it just like that. Now you can go all the way, which I'm actually going to do. What I mean by that is, if you see on the other side, if you look at the other side, you have that part that's kind of flat. I'm gonna line up my hobby knife and get rid of that excess because I still want that line. So what I'm gonna do is I'll cut it off and then I'll run around to show everybody. But I'm gonna take my knife. Doesn't need to be perfect. We're gonna cover this with putty as well, no, with plot plate. We're gonna cut that down. So now we're gonna find one of our little rectangular strips. They're not that big, so if they look like that, you should have 2 of them. It's gonna be the same height of the other ones. If you wanna double check the ones that you haven't glued on, you can put it right next to it. And they will be the same height. Because some of the sizes in here are various heights to give you different depths. But they're the same height here. So we're gonna take the glue again. You can do 2 methods. You can either glue the part, or which I think you guys should try out just to get a feel. rub as much off from the brush as you can. Take the part with your tweezer and then actually rub it against the fibers of the brush. And whatever residual glue that's on there won't be much. It will go on the part. And then we're just gonna put it against. Now, if that didn't work, you just try it again. Or you could try the other method, whatever you feel comfortable with. And we're just gonna glue that down. Now, if the height's not the same, that's okay. You can always trim it after. But you wanna have something like that, because we're doing like a wrap around the part. Now it likes to work for me. So we're gonna do something like that. And then once you're done with that, I'm gonna draw out a design that we're gonna do with the plot plate. You can always change it if you like, but I'm pretty much essentially gonna do something like this. So I'm gonna try to do something like that. So I'm gonna make a part that encompasses here, turns down, kind of wraps around that. Now with that, in your bag, you should have two very wide rectangles. They should be the widest parts in the whole bag. So you should have two of them. They're the widest ones of the bunch. Now, what you can do is if you have tape, you can tape out a design. Now, since we don't have tape, we're just gonna, and since you're free to do, I didn't bring tape because I could hinder you just to design. I want you to be able to play with the plastic and do whatever you like. If you want to follow me, you can. If not, you're free to do what you like. What I'm gonna do is I'm gonna draw out a rough outline on the part itself. Just to have an idea what I'm going for. I'm probably not gonna go as deep as the outline, but I'm gonna cut off that top and that little edge pretty much to have it against here. Essentially, the rectangle is gonna fit like this, like that. So some modifications are gonna be needed to the plastic. So I'm gonna cut off a little bit of the top. Now go slowly, because if you chop off too much, you might have to change your design. So just go a little bit at a time. So get your hobby knife, do it on the mat, don't do it in the air. So we're gonna cut out a little bit. And I'm gonna sand a little bit. Now the plastic is slightly thicker, and I'm gonna put it against the part to see how it looks, because I want it to line up with the edge here. So it looks like it's not perfectly flush, so I'm gonna have to slightly modify it a little bit more, which is okay. And I'm gonna cut a little bit off the top to give it a different design. And keep checking it. I always like to check it multiple times before I glue it down, because essentially once you glue it down, it's kind of harder to take it off. Put it against. I'm happy with how that looks. Now I'm just gonna modify the bottom. So you can, without gluing it on, I'm gonna hold it against the part. And I'm gonna use the pencil and I'm gonna draw out how the part forms. So I want the plot plate to accentuate the model. And I'm gonna go a little bit above and I'm gonna make a little notch. So now that I have this line cut out, or this line drawn, I'm gonna remove this residual and make out this little piece. Now if the lines aren't perfect, that's okay. You can always cut off more plastic and you can always sand it down. Plot plate is actually a lot of fun. You're free to change the model how you like. You can actually reform the entire model just through plastic. And then once you're happy with that, we can glue that down. What time is it? I'm probably gonna wrap it up.
1207.
1207. You said 1215, or
Yeah.
yeah, rapid.
Thank you, Ethan. So model tape and sandpaper. So then once I glue that on, I get something like this. You're free to change it how you like as well. I'm just gonna walk by so everybody can see how it looks in person. I would like to have gone further along today, but that's as far as we can get with the seminar due to the judging event coming up. I hope that's fine with everybody. If you do have questions though, feel free to stop me and ask me throughout the day. And if you want to see the kit, I can pass it around so you guys can see how like an end result would look. But if you want to keep playing with it, you can. For you guys to keep is the tape. So your sections of tape are to keep home. Your individual bags that I made ahead of time are yours to keep, to play around with. And the sandpaper and the model kit are free to keep. The other items, if you wish to keep them, I believe Nick will be happy to sell them to you so you could take them home. But essentially, your tape, your sandpaper, your model, and your bags are for yours to take home. Any questions so far? All right. Thank you, everyone, for attending. And this is my first time doing this, so thank you for being patient with me. So thank you.